are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come, and when he cometh he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. That was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition.
Not just the capital, but the geographical layout of the whole of Washington, D.C. was carefully designed, and the capital itself is just one component. Take a look at this photo and notice its relation to the Washington Monument, one of the most famous obelisks in the world. Notice how similar this is to the Vatican's layout. This exact same layout can be found in Paris also and many other cities. Why this configuration? The key to this is perhaps the dome, which dominates these buildings. In many ancient cultures, the dome shape represented the female principle or the womb, when you have the male principle, which is the obelisk, connected to the female principle. It was believed by occultists that a third entity, a kind of spiritual energy, is produced. We've already seen that idea in the square and compass logo. In occultism, the idea is also quite prevalent that certain shapes and colors either create or diffuse energies. We're quite familiar with this concept today in the form of Feng Shui, which was a craze a while ago. Arranging your furniture in relation to what they do with energies to create balance. You can think of this kind of arrangement between the obelisk and the dome as a kind of Feng Shui designed to generate a spiritual power. Now if we go inside the Capitol and look up at the dome, we see this. Now this dome looks almost exactly the same as the one in the Vatican, and at the top is a painting called the Apotheosis. It was painted by an artist called Constantino Brumidi. His story is interesting because in his younger years he became famous for his paintings commissioned by the Vatican. In 1848 there was a Masonic attempt to overthrow the power of the Pope, and although it was ultimately unsuccessful, this guy who made a living painting for the Vatican, Brumidi, was surprisingly found to be one of the guilty chief conspirators. After that he was shipped off to the USA, and there he made a name for himself by working for occult societies. It was he who painted this painting, which creates a kind of Masonic mirror image to the Vatican. The whole setup of the Capitol, dome and obelisk is present in the Masonic Washington and in the Catholic Vatican. Now this would seem odd for two seemingly opposed ideologies to do this, but then we remember Alice A. Bailey's pronouncement. There is no question, therefore, that the work to be done in familiarizing the general public with the nature of the mysteries is of paramount importance at this time. These mysteries will be restored to outer expression through the medium of the Church and the Masonic fraternity. Bailey predicted that the mystery religion would start to become familiar to the general public through both the Church, meaning the false Church, and the Masonic fraternity. This two-pronged attack appear to be on opposing sides but are working towards the same end. Remember that the founder of the Illuminated Masons, Adam Weishaupt, had actually come from the Catholic Jesuit order, but after creating the Masonic Illuminati, he claimed to be anti-Catholic. The Masons and Church appear to be opposed, but in fact are both puppets of Satan. At the top of the Capitol dome we find this statue, who symbolically faces east towards the sunrise. This is the goddess of reason who the French enthroned at Notre Dame, or as we've come to know her since the beginning of this study, Asherah or Ashtoreth. She pops up absolutely everywhere. This particular idol was designed by a Freemason, Thomas Crawford, and is standing on top of a spherical shape which almost certainly represents the earth, around which is written in Latin, E pluribus unum. This means, out of many, one. Now remember, there's always a light side and dark side to every symbol, so the lighter good meaning for public consumption is calling for the unity of the American people, which was made up of immigrants. The dark hidden meaning is that the whole world will be united under the feet of this enigmatic goddess. The American form of Asherah is mostly known as Columbia. The DC in Washington, D.C. actually stands for Washington District of Columbia, so effectively it's like saying that it's her district, her territory where she rules. Now the definition of apotheosis is the exaltation of a subject to a divine level. So who are they exalting to a divine level here? Well, if we look closer, we see that it's the same man who stands under the dome, George Washington. Look at the bottom and you will see the goddess Columbia or Asherah, and then George Washington is depicted directly above her. It represents the deification of the man, George Washington. Note the pose he is striking with his left arm raised and his right hand extended outwards. He was depicted in a similar manner when this statue was commissioned. Now this statue is again elevating Washington to a position of God, as it was modelled on Zeus. It was meant to go on display at the Capitol, but after it was found to make people uncomfortable, it was moved to the Smithsonian Museum instead. What is extraordinary is that this pose is more commonly associated with Baphomet, the horned goat god that represents Satan. Remember when we turned the pentagram representing man upside down, we got Baphomet. So if the painting intends to elevate the man Washington to the level of a god, we are forced to ask the question, what kind of god? Incidentally, while Baphomet is on the screen, you may also notice that it has both male and female features, which is the usual male and female, light and dark from one source theme that we've already seen countless times. If we go back to the painting one more time, we see that the other figures that surround Washington are also ancient gods and goddesses from pagan mythologies. The likes of Atlantis, Venus, Vulcan, Ceres and Minerva, all in reality just demons looking for worship. Directly beneath the dome is the Capitol's crypt, and on the center of the floor there is a bronze sun symbol. This symbol is geographically the literal center of Washington, D.C., and all street addresses are attributed in relation to it. You will actually find many pagan gods littered all around the Capitol building. This is just one final example representing Mars to be found near the entrance.
Massachusetts group. United States Coast Guard, Boston, Massachusetts group. Break time 242331 Greenwich Mean Time. Quote, the Coast Guard has received a report of two red flares sighted in the vicinity of Spectacle Island. All vessels in the area are requested to keep a sharp lookout for vessels in distress. If possible, report any sightings to the Coast Guard. Unquote. Break, United States Coast Guard, Boston, Massachusetts group.
We can also agree on the need to stand up to anti-Catholic bias, to defend religious liberty, and to create a culture that celebrates life.
And then he goes on to say this.
And we've got to come together, not only as a nation, but as a world community. Thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. Thank you.
So he's talking about the one world government there.
And we've got to come together, not only as a nation, but as a world community.
And he says the religious leaders here are to be an example for everybody else.
And the great religious leaders here tonight give us all an example that we can follow.
Okay, I don't think they're probably that good of an example.
In the scriptures that we Jews and Christians and Muslims cherish,
and we've got to come together, not only as a nation, but as a world community.
This cross, this thing, and there's a crown above it. We couldn't make out what these different metals are there on his shoulder. But let me just show you what this thing is. This is the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for God and the Empire. You say, what's significant about that? Well, this order, if you do the research into it, you can look into it more, but it's a British Commonwealth order. In other words, it's people that are subservient to the throne of England, the throne of England being subservient to the Vatican. It is basically a Shriner level
of the Holy Father, Pope Francis. His message about rejecting a mindset of hostility, his calls to reduce inequality, his warnings about climate change.
We can also agree on the need to stand up to anti-Catholic bias.
Stand up to anti-Catholic bias. Well, then I guess I'm going to be in trouble, huh? Because I'm anti-Catholic. Because I'm against Roman Catholicism. Oh, but he's the lesser of two evils, right? Oh, Hillary's such a wicked, liberal and thinks, and she is, but he'll be so much better. They're both servants of the Vatican.
So, folks, this is all in control of the Jesuits. So the joke being here is that Henry Kissinger and the other people that he mentioned are Catholic. I mean, what you're getting told here is the truth in the form of jokes.
And without the amazing support of the many devoted Catholics on stage. Catholics like Henry Kissinger, Howard Rubinstein.
Right, all Jews, apparently, and according to the internet conspiracy truthers, the Jews run the world. So this guy's telling you the truth here in the form of a joke.
And without the amazing support of the many devoted Catholics on stage. Catholics like Henry Kissinger.
Okay, because they're not Jews, they are Catholic.